Hey guys, welcome back to the latest episode of the Growing a Dental Practice podcast. I am your host, Mike Hedden from Patient Boost. In today's episode, I'm joined by Stephanie Rodin, founder and principal of Rodin Legal PC. Rodin Legal is a tri-state based law firm, so in New York, New Jersey, Connecticut, and they are focused on assisting dental and healthcare professionals. Welcome to the show, Stephanie. Thanks for joining me today. How are you?
Hi, Mike. Thanks for having me on. I always appreciate it. How am I? I'm good. It's early morning. It's, hump day for me. So actually at the time that we're recording this, but so I'm just, I'm getting through the week. How are you?
Yeah, I'm good. Thank you. I have to say, thank you so much for having me on your podcast last week.
Absolutely. It was fun. I actually am liking this week to week. We're really getting to know each other, and
Yes.
It's just great.
Yeah.
I'm loving it.
Yeah, because we've had a couple of chats in the past, and we were both like, oh, do you want to be on my podcast? And we're like, absolutely. And it's just funny how it's fallen like week after week.
I know.
And obviously, I when I come to New York, I am definitely hitting you up, and we're going to go and have some food or something. That'd be great.
Absolutely. Let me know.
And yes, and obviously I know you've been very busy. So yeah, it's great to have you on.
Yeah, thanks.
So without further ado, we're going to talk all things law and dental and healthcare. But before we do, just want to dive into, get to know Stephanie a bit better. So tell me a bit more about you. What's your background?
So I come from a family of doctors and dentists. Okay. So I was brought up with it. When I was younger, my dad is now he's a retired periodontist, but at the time, he wanted me to be a dentist. He first started with my brother, and my brother went, no. And then my brother went on to become an orthopedic surgeon. When he asked me, I was like, no, I don't think so, because I just never had the interest in just the cutting and just working with patients personally. And I always liked the business side of things. So I ended up, having an undergrad in accounting, going off to law school. And then in law school, I kept seeing healthcare pop up. So the first summer, I clerked for a judge up in Boston, and they did, typical personal injury type cases like slip and fall, car accidents. And for whatever reason, that summer, when I clerked, all they did was malpractice cases, of medical and dental malpractice cases. And I was like, okay, that's interesting, not knowing much about it. Second year, when I was on law review, I was assigned the topic, the FDA and medical devices and how it started. Okay, still interesting, but still related to healthcare. Third year, I was put into a clinic of the Massachusetts Department of Public Health. And that was sort of it for me. I went, all right, obviously someone wants me to be involved in healthcare. I graduated law school and have basically been working with healthcare ever since. I started on the defense side. Well, I started on the litigation side because I did plaintiff work first, then moved over to the defense side in representing dentists and physicians in cases that were brought against them from prior patients. And then a little over 12 years ago, I opened up my own practice to really focus on the business management of the individual practitioners and their practices to make sure that they were protected. So it's been a long road sort of to how I got here, but it was always someone or something telling me that I needed to focus here, because it was never my first intent at all. I mean, I wanted to be a CPA, and here I am. So it's very interesting how things evolve sometimes without, you even knowing that it's happening. And that's sort of how I got to where I am.
Love that. No, my Bran, she will never listen to this podcast, but she always says, things do happen for a reason, and you normally always make the best decision, normally at the time.
Yeah.
But I love that. I love the fact that you kind of I want to avoid the medical at the beginning, and it's just no, we're gonna bring you back.
Well, the best part is that when I did start working, with healthcare and dentists in particular, my dad was so excited because he always wanted me to be a dentist. And now he's like, this is the next best thing, because I can talk to you about procedures and cases because I was dealing with it on the malpractice side. I was looking at x-rays and I was looking at, dental reports and records and, and I would ask him, is this typical that this nerve would be here? Like those type of things, just so I can have a better understanding. And he was just loving it because it was like, oh, she's actually doing it. Like she may not be actually performing the procedures, but she's completely involved. And I've gotten so involved in some of the cases where, I could read x-rays. I know where nerves are. I've self-diagnosed my dental injuries. It's really sort of scary, but it's interesting and fun actually all at the same time.
I love that. That's fantastic. And so why did you make what was I know you mentioned that, you preferred the business side of things, but why did you go from kind of the individual cases where, patients are suing dentists to the more transactional business things? What was the jump there, or why was the jump?
I was doing litigation for, on and off close to 10 years. And I think looking back on it, I just got a little burnt. It was the same type of cases that were coming through. It was, the same questions for the patients and for the doctors. It was, the same players in the sense of all the same attorneys, and although you're going to get that in any type of field, I think I was just feeling really burnt. And I was noticing that in a lot of the cases that we were dealing with, if not all of them, the majority of the issues were about the actual treatment, but then there were all these sub issues that they didn't have the right consent forms, or they didn't update their consent forms, or maybe they didn't have a legal entity, or maybe they were, they had someone working for them that was treated as a contractor as opposed to employee, and how that sort of changed or helped or not helped the situation depending upon who was brought in by the plaintiff, right? To be sued. And I was just noticing a lot of these other concepts that are about the running of the practice, which interested me more. And so I decided, okay, let's not do the litigation so much anymore. Let's do the flip so I can work with more individuals, because everyone who's running a practice or joining a practice needs assistance. I can have more of a variety of the type of cases that I was taking. And I would expand my legal knowledge based upon all these type of different fields that I could be working on. And that excited me more than just the same thing day in and day out. And, by having the litigation experience, I look at everything from a litigation eye. So this way, when I'm looking at contracts, I can say, nope, this is ambiguous. If this is going to litigation, this is going to create a problem. And I can actually use my litigation background to help with the transactional side, which I think is really beneficial, not just for my clients, but for the work that I do and how I do it.
Yeah, fantastic. So the experience with the litigation, really set you up well for the transactional stuff.
Yeah, I think so.
You've got a really holistic view of dentistry then from a law perspective, which is really cool.
Yeah, definitely.
Fantastic. And so you obviously made that switch from litigation to sort of transactional. Did you sort of set up your own firm sort of almost immediately into that transition, or did you work for someone else before?
No, I went straight from, working as an employee in a, dental malpractice firm for the most part, to setting up my own firm back in, June of 2010. So it was, so basically what had happened was, I always wanted to be my own boss. And I knew that really probably from a younger age, just because of how I am. But, my dad owned his own practice. My brother owns his own practice. Most people in my family, because they were doctors, owned their own practice or were partners of a practice. So that's what I was brought up with. And that's how I looked at things. So for me to own my own practice seems second nature. And, it was always just a matter of time, I think. And, back when I started thinking about it, I went through a surgery, and I basically, even though everything came out fine and everything was, everything was good, I had said to myself the night before surgery that, as long as everything is good, and I'm fine on the other side, I said, I want to open up my own firm within 6 months. And I had my surgery November 30th. By June 7th, I was out on my own. So I did it pretty much within the 6 months. And I think it was the surgery that sort of kicked me more so to expedite it than anything else. But it was always there. It was just a matter of time.
Yeah. Fantastic. Yeah. Kind of, to be honest, that's kind of like me when people say, why did you start your own business? It was like, everyone in the family has their own business. So it's just like, you grow up with, I always find like I've grown up with the business owner's mindset. So whenever I was with people or colleagues that would moan about the boss, I was not as empathetic. I'd be more empathetic with the boss. And I don't know if that was the same with you. Like, well,
a little
of course
bit.
You can't do that. Yeah, a little bit like that.
But it was interesting because I know when you were on my podcast, you had mentioned that, and you had actually mentioned some of the type of businesses that were in your family, like your dad's business and your uncle's business, I think, that were all very different.
Yeah.
And to me, like I don't even remember if I made a comment or not, but I know in my mind, I was like, oh my God, that's just so interesting because they were all so different. I mean, like for my family, they may have been in different fields of medicine or dentistry, but it was still all within healthcare. So it was very but
yeah, that's true. That is true. Like it's very random in my family. But no, so how does that, right? So everyone is medical related. We've all got your own business and stuff. What do family functions look like? Or how do they pan out? Like,
so I would say, so the first 2 years of my career, I did plaintiff malpractice work. And I love the fact that I did that because it really brought me into the field of litigation. It helped me understand the cases from the plaintiff perspective of timing and really understanding, courts and the papers and the pleadings, because there's obviously more work to be done on the plaintiff side because they have to prove their case than on the defense side. But no one in my family spoke to me for 2 years. I mean, not literally, but like for the most part, because I was suing colleagues or friends or just people in their industry. And everyone was like, what in the world are you doing? This is not what you're supposed to be doing. So that was a little bit of an issue. And then when I flipped over to the defense side, everyone was loving me again, which was great. But no, I mean, since I've opened up my practice, I don't know if it's because it's family or not, but the only people that actually ask for my opinion on things are just my immediate family, like my father, my brother at some point, sometimes my sister-in-law, but not really like my uncles or cousins or other people. It's actually sort of interesting. It's almost like, yeah, we know this is what you do, but we're going to keep family as family and not actually intrude. So there is an actual separation, and I don't talk about it at all during family functions. And for that, I'm actually thankful because I know it could really take over, and I don't want to talk about work every single minute. So for that, it's actually good. It's just interesting that everyone in my family is in some field of medicine or dentistry, though.
Fantastic. No, it's awesome. I bet it's like around the table. I bet the conversations are pretty awesome though, because it's very intelligent people. You laugh, sir.
Well, I mean, like, every family has their dynamics. Mine's no different.
Love it. Perfect. So let's continue talking about the law. So we've already mentioned that you are now fully focused on the transactional side of the law. What specifically does that mean? Like, can you give us some examples of like where you help your existing clients? That'd be fantastic.
So I only work with healthcare. Okay. And healthcare is that big umbrella of anyone who is licensed under the Department of Education or the state, right? So it's dentist in every specialty of dentist, obviously, physicians and all the different specialties, physical therapists, occupational therapists, nurses, acupuncturists, chiropractors, any mental health specialist. So it's really anyone, just so you have an idea. So I only work within healthcare. So, but when it comes to the type of fields of law, so there's, employment, because I help with the review or the drafting of employment agreements or independent contractor agreements and even the employee manuals for practices, right? Then there's the real estate field where I deal with the commercial leases, okay, for the practitioner. That's, throughout the tri-state area, or subleases for that matter. If there is the buying of real estate with a practice, I'll handle that concept of it as well. But I don't just handle the buying of space or anything residential. It's solely from the commercial concept, right?
Mhm.
Then there's the business side, like the corporate side, I guess, of law, that involves the formation of the practices, and that would be the formation of the legal entities, of the PCs or the PLLCs or the LLCs, depending upon the states. The drafting or reviewing and updating of consent forms for the patients to sign. There's the buy and sell of practices. So you have the asset purchase agreements, which falls under corporate, mergers and things like that. And then there's the day-to-day questions that come up. A patient came in, they were really disruptive. My front staff didn't know what to say. How do I deal with this? And it's coaching them, right? It's making sure that people in the practice understand HIPAA and the rules around HIPAA, making sure that they're working with other type of professionals, even like yourself, with the marketing, with broker, with contractors, with accountants, people who understand their field and understand the needs and understands, the legal parameters of HIPAA and confidentiality and things like that, so that they are protected. I mean, when I work with my clients, it's making sure that they understand what's needed of them. They feel protected so that they can just concentrate on the patient care of whatever it is that they went to school for like, the 30 years they were in school. So, it's, like they come out of school and they've been working their asses off, right? And they haven't really been getting paid, because residency doesn't pay, and, residency pays a little bit, but then there's fellowship, and then they get their job. And, they're so concerned about salary to make up for probably the debt that they're in. I work with them to make sure that all of those other things that happen in contracts and that, can come up in their careers, they have knowledge of, and that they're protected so that they could concentrate on making the money, paying off their debt, and treating their patients, in the best way possible, and not necessarily in that order. But yes.
Yeah, fantastic. So it sounds like a lot.
Yeah, I mean, it's funny as I say it. It's a lot, but like doing it day to day, I mean, I just love it. I love my clients. I love the work. I love being able to help them in ways that they didn't realize, and I'm constantly learning. I mean, it's why they call it the practice of law, or even the practice of medicine, or practice of dentistry, because it's constantly evolving and changing. And you always need to be up to date on things. And my clients will bring in situations that really have me thinking of, okay, how best can we protect you with this that wasn't in any other contract, that I can make sure doesn't come back to bite them in some way. So it's, I just love it.
Fantastic. And you can tell, like, you can hear the passion in your voice, which is awesome. Love it.
Yeah. I mean, look, like someone had asked me fairly recently, if I wasn't a lawyer, what other field would I want to do for a living? And truthfully, I couldn't come up with anything. Like, it would be like, I hope I win the lottery, because I would never be able to work if I wasn't an attorney. Like, there isn't anything else that I think I would want to do, I would be good at, I would enjoy as much, and that it brings such satisfaction to me. I mean, don't get me wrong. I mean, like every job, there's annoyances and aggravation, especially if you can't get everything changed in the contract for your client and you have to tell them this isn't going to work or something like that. I mean, that's frustrating, but as a whole, it's incredibly satisfying to know that, I'm able to help in some little way to make their life a little bit easier so that they can bring care to others. I mean, it's really cool.
Yeah, no, it's awesome. Yeah, that's a great element of being in the industry. So just to check, you haven't changed your mind on being a dentist?
I have not. No offense to any dentist out there. I have unbelievable respect for what you do, but I would not be a good dentist at all. No.
Yeah, fair.
It would be horrible.
Well, that kind of brings me back to that. I think the first thing you said about not wanting to do it was like cutting. I was like, I don't want to do the cutting. I was like, okay, right, yeah, you're maybe not the right person.
Well, no, I mean, like, look, when my dad first had asked me, I mean, this was way before HIPAA and confidentiality rules and anything was in existence. And so, like, I was in the office when he would be performing surgery. I mean, he was a periodontist. So he did surgeries, he did perio surgeries, and he did, implants and things like that. And there was just so much blood in this small little like space of your mouth, and totally normal. I mean, totally normal for dentists to do this. And I'm like, yeah, no, that's just not.
I'm out. I'm out. Right, pass. That's a hard pass.
No, I'm like,
love it.
I want to help them in a totally different way.
Yeah, fantastic. Love that. No, that's awesome. So, I would love to know, kind of, why a dentist should work with a healthcare attorney versus just a general attorney. Like, what are the real key advantages to working with someone like yourself over like Joe Bloggs, that sort of general attorney?
So, I mean, look, a real estate attorney that handles commercial leases, can they do what I do? Absolutely. I'm not going to say that, they're incapable of reviewing a commercial lease on behalf of healthcare. There are many clauses in commercial leases that are, generic across industries. There's no question. But for healthcare and for dentists, there are certain things that are very specific. I mean, especially if you're dealing with construction because of HIPAA, right? There's language in leases that says, the landlord, has the right for reasonable access into the space, right? To come in, especially for emergencies. I always add in language about HIPAA because they're not allowed to talk to any of the patients, or they shouldn't be allowed, I should say, to find out information, to know who anyone is. I mean, that's a HIPAA violation. So there's little things like that if you're not within the field of healthcare, that you may not think of to actually add into the lease or look at it. Like another thing is, especially for dentists, is water consumption. Everyone thinks dentists use a ton of water while they're working, because they're, working in the mouth, and then the person has to take the water, and they're using the water pick or whatever it is that they may be doing during their procedures. But there really isn't that much water consumption. And a lot of times the landlords will want to have this, flat fee for water, as opposed to just doing the water meter, or the client, going directly to the vendor for, water or what have you, because they feel like it's so much. And that's something that's just not really true. And so you want to, look at that language and make sure, there's also language about assignments that are typical in commercial leases, especially in New York. I mean, I can't speak throughout the country, but, within the tri-state area, there's language that if there's an assignment, meaning that the named tenant will assign the entire space to another third party, right? And generally this happens only when they sell their practice. Someone else comes in and they take over the lease or the remaining lease, right? I deal with that all the time. But there's language sometimes where if there's a sale of the equipment, the landlord is entitled to a certain percentage of the proceeds. You can't have that in sales of practices because of issues of, fee splitting, although it's not necessarily the revenue of the care, but it sort of all comes into play, and that language always needs to be removed. So like there's certain things that are very specific to healthcare. It's not that someone can't do it, but you just need to know what to look for. And that's the same across like all the different fields of law. Like I use leases as the example, but obviously it's the same for employment. It's the same for the buy and sell of practices. It's the same for formations. I mean, in New York, when you're forming a legal entity, it takes 4 to 5 months because you have to go through the Department of Education and there's more rules involved to confirm the name and the license and have the approval before you can file it with the state. I can't tell you how many people do it wrong. And it's not because, of anything other than the lack of knowledge of what's needed. And that's really all it is.
Mm-hmm.
So working with someone who understands, who's been doing it, who has a relationship with these other third parties, who knows what to do, will be, better in protecting the end client than not. And that's really what it's about.
Yeah, absolutely. I was going to say, it sounds like, an attorney is always going to look out for your best interests, or at least I hope so. But with a healthcare focused attorney, there's that extra layer of protection.
Yeah.
And I guess you can get to, not in every situation, but I guess you can get to resolutions faster because you're kind of you can preempt things and you can.
Yeah, I mean, look, I've been doing this for a long time. I can look at an employment agreement regardless of the length of it, and pinpoint, this is the area, this is the area, this is and know exactly what needs to get changed, as opposed to maybe someone who's new, who has to really go through it at a slower pace and may not understand certain things, and that's, I'm I guess seasoned in it. So lack of a better word. Yeah. So and that has come with, time and experience and my knowledge. So
fantastic. No, love it. That's fantastic. So based on your experience of being, your own business owner, and the fact that you have worked with, countless healthcare professionals and dentists, and you've got a ton of healthcare professionals in your family, all with their own businesses, what would you say is your number one piece of advice for anyone thinking about buying or starting a dental practice?
So you have to make sure that you love what you do first and foremost, because your entire life is going to go into this practice, from any standpoint. When I opened up, or was even thinking about opening up my practice, I got 3 things of advice. Okay. And to this day, I still live by them. For the ones that have, well, you'll see in a second. Okay. So here's the first one was, sorry, I digress. The first thing of advice is, if you're really looking to open up your own practice and to be your own boss, you have to give it a minimum of 2 years before you decide to call it quits, because it's so easy to say this isn't working, but you need to build the foundation just like you would in a house. And you really need to make sure that that works. So minimum 2 years. Okay. That's the first. Second piece is meet as many people as you possibly can for networking, because you never know who's going to be able to help or who's going to remember you, and just keep meeting people. When I first started, I sat down with anyone who was willing to talk to me, anyone, because I wasn't as busy with clients. So I had a lot of free time. I sat down with, I mean, hundreds of people. Some of them I knew maybe could help me. Some of them probably on their face couldn't. But the idea that I was able to meet all these people, because you never know who they may know, who they can introduce you to. So meet as many people as you possibly can. Third piece of advice is that once you meet all these people and you start getting referrals in, okay, and hopefully that starts to happen and you start to get busier, don't ever forget who helped you from the beginning, and you have to keep thinking of them, reaching out to them. If you're able to refer people, or send them thank you cards, or just keep them top of mind, because if you stop reaching out to the people that you originally had started with, they're going to stop sending referrals, and then you're going to have to start the process all over again. And so you have to just keep up all the business relationships as much as possible, in order to continue moving forward and growing your practice. It's as much as you may love what you do, it's still a job, and you still have to take care of it like a child. I mean, there are a couple of people, I don't have any children of my own. And there were a couple of people who said, well, do you regret not having children? And I said, no, my child is my practice. My practice now is 12 and a half years old. I mean, it's a growing thing, and it's grown from day one until now, and it's going to continue in ways that I had never dreamed of because of, just natural progression. And it is my baby. You have to look at it that way, because otherwise, if you just look at it as like, oh, it's a practice separate and apart, you may not get the same results that you're looking for. And that's pretty much all I can say.
Fantastic. I think that might be one of the best responses to that question I've ever had.
Really? Huh.
Yeah, I honestly, because it's the 2-year thing is fantastic. Yeah, I totally agree with you. And in fact, I think I've mentioned my gran twice now, but so my gran always says it takes about 2 years for a business.
I think I need to meet your gran. I'm
sorry. I would love you to meet her. When you're next over, when you come over, she wouldn't fly to New York now, but when you're in London, I'll get her to come meet you.
Absolutely.
But she always said, it takes you a couple of years to kind of figure things out. For us, the business that we started at the beginning is very different to the business that I now have. I was a generalist, and now I'm a dental focused sort of specialist. Same for you. You've probably changed. The type that you won't work with all clients. I'm imagining there's probably some red flag clients that you've learned over the years to stay clear of.
Yep.
But I love that. The networking, fantastic. I think that's one of the reasons that we've been so successful so far, is because we've networked. We get to meet fabulous people like yourself. And I totally agree with the following up thing. It's hard. It's hard work. Hard. So you need to get a system in place, and we're trying to figure that out. But even if it's every couple of months, like you say, sort of reaching out, trying to grab a virtual coffee. That's the beauty these days. You haven't got to do it in person. It can just be a virtual thing.
Yeah. Even the smallest things. I do this with my clients for the most part is, when clients sign on with me, they fill out a client questionnaire. So I can get probably a lot of the information I need for the matter I'm working on, but also for them to go into my book of business and things like that. Right. And I ask them their birthday. I don't care the year, but the month and the day, so that this way, even when we're not working together, every year I'm going to send out an email wishing them a happy birthday. And it's just a very small way of keeping them, in mind, of me being able to reach out and actually wish them a very happy birthday, and if there's any questions, it's, then actually there's a question I needed to ask you. Sometimes people don't remember because they're so busy that until there's a reminder of something, then they may be like, oh my God, you know what? I do need to speak to her. Or that reminds me, my lease is coming due. Do you have any recommendations for me? Or a colleague of mine was just asking me for a reference, and I totally forgot your name. It could be something as simple and as, insignificant as that, but it's always good to just keep in touch. And the same thing should be done for referral sources. Sending out that yearly, hey, what's going on? Was just thinking about you, getting to know them, did you see any new concerts lately? Or, whatever it may be. And I try to do that.
Yeah.
I slack as much as the next person, but I try to do it as much as I can.
Yeah, no, I love it. And so agree with it. That's fantastic. Well, Stephanie, this has been brilliant. I'm just so glad. It's just amazing that we've done both podcasts back to back almost. It's great. Honestly, loved it. Well, thank you so much for sharing your wisdom and your story. It's a cracking story. It's probably pretty unique. I feel like that kind of. It could be a movie.
I don't know about that, but thank you for having me on.
I always love this. Show.
I love hearing your accent, like I said last time on my own podcast. And I think what we should do is we should have a rerun and redo the podcasts in another couple of months about updates to our practices and just keep it going.
Absolutely. Yes.
I would love to have you back on.
Absolutely. And I am hoping to be in New York at some point next year. So we could do an in-person podcast.
Oh my God, that would be fantastic.
How could that be?
Absolutely.
Be mind-blowing. Awesome. Well, listeners, if you've enjoyed today's episode and you're keen to learn more about how the different ways in which Stephanie can help you, then feel free to check her out on her website at rodinlegal.com. That's RODIN legal.com. or send her an email. She's more than happy to answer your questions around law and everything like that. So it's Stephanie, STEPHANIE @rodinlegal.com. I will include all those in the show notes. But yeah, feel free to get in touch with Stephanie. She, regardless of how things go, it'll be a laugh, a professional laugh. Perfect. Well, thanks, guys. Thanks, Stephanie.